and welcome back to another episode of The Book Stop. I'm your host Jen, and I'm very excited to talk about today's episode. But before we begin, there will be spoilers as we talk about major events that unfold within the story. In addition, each episode will have a list of trigger warnings in the description. Be sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast, and show your support on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. And welcome back to another episode of The Book Stop. And today we are joined by Cody.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Cody, what book did you bring and why did you bring this book for us to talk about?
We brought the Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, J.R.R. Tolkien. Figured just kind of finish off that trilogy that you had.
Yeah, this is the end of the trilogy, which is crazy. 3 years in the making. I personally never thought I would get through all the books. I'm surprised I got through the first one, but here we are. Yeah, and we did The Hobbit, too.
Yeah, The Hobbit.
Yeah, so before we get into it, we're going to play a little game. So you are going to summarize this book in 30 seconds. Try your best, and you may begin whenever you're ready.
To start off, this, as we mentioned earlier, it's just the final version of the travels of Frodo and the Ring. We learn a little bit more about the Fellowship and where they stand.
Yeah, it's the final ending of this book. I'm going to summarize it really quick of that one single person that doesn't know what Lord of the Rings is about. And that person was me.
Yikes.
Listen, I've watched the first movie, never got through the second, I definitely haven't touched the third. But I'm doing a movie marathon in September where we're watching all of these and all of the Hobbits.
Ironically enough, the first Lord of the Rings movie I saw was the cartoon version, the animated version.
I didn't even know there was an animated version. You learn something new every day. The Dark Lord has risen, and as he unleashes hordes of orcs to conquer all of Middle-earth, Sam and Frodo struggle deep in his realm in Mordor. To defeat Sauron, the One Ring must be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom, but the way is impossibly hard, and Frodo is weakened. The ring corrupts all who bear it, and Frodo's time is running out. Will Sam and Frodo succeed, or will the Dark Lord rule Middle-earth once more? So, do you have a favorite quote in this book, or quotes?
There was quite a few of them, but first one is, "Authority is not given to you, Steward of Gondor, to order the hour of your death." That was the quote that Gandalf had stated to Denethor.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was, "I didn't know anything even grew in Mordor." That was when Sam and Frodo cast off the bridge and they fell into a thicket of thorns.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it makes sense that thorns would grow there.
well,
They're painful.
oh, and then there was one more. Same thing from Sam. "If Sauron himself were to offer me water, I would shake his hand." I found that one kind of funny.
Yeah, it just shows Sam as a character.
He's very optimistic.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Yeah, I love Sam. We're gonna get into all of Sam. I'm sure we'll talk about him a lot in this one. I brought two as well. I honestly don't remember where this first one came from. It was probably halfway through the book. I know the second one is at the end of the book, and it's a very popular quote. I'm sure a lot of people know this quote. But the first one is, "But it is the way of my people to use light words at such a time and say less than what they mean. We fear to say too much. It robs us of the right words when it just is out of place." I think that one's pretty spot on. I think a lot of people don't say what they mean, especially when there's very hard time coming. And then my last quote, again, is the popular one, is, "At the end, when Frodo's sailing across the sea, Gandalf says, 'Well, here at last, dear friends, on the shore of the sea, comes the end of our fellowship in Middle-earth. Go in peace. I will not say to not weep, for not all tears are evil.'" I really like that one. That one definitely saved the ending for me. And I think it's a very powerful speech, and it shows, men can cry, and that's okay.
Well, what's even amazing about it is that it can also be utilized in real life as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was one of the things I really liked about a majority of the quotes from this book, is we can utilize it in this day and age as well.
Yeah, it's very impactful for I'm sure a lot of kids read this book. It's good to have those emotions because they're not always a negative. Sometimes you just have to get it out. And you'll feel better after. They had at the time when Frodo was leaving and all the hobbits were there, it was a very hard time, but it was also kind of a show of progression for Frodo because he's going to go and get better.
It was nice because the impact was more epic for me because of the fact that not only was, the other hobbits friends, but they were family to him as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, aside from Sam being his gardener for the most part and bodyguard.
I don't know about that. We're going to talk about Sam and Frodo's relationship a lot. I think he was more than a gardener. You don't do that stuff with your gardener. Okay.
Well, maybe in ancient times, absolutely.
Maybe. Why do you even need a gardener? You get out there and garden yourself. What are some things that you liked about this book?
That's a good one. I mean, one of the biggest ones was the newfound growth for a couple of the hobbits.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, Pippin and Merry both. I mean, they made an impact because they became more than just hobbits to some extent. They even got titles.
Yeah, the character growth in this last book, it definitely shows, especially like you said, Merry and Pippin, where at the beginning of the book, just smoking, chilling, vibing, eating.
Smoking with the munchies.
Yeah, exactly. They're killing men. They're stewards to kings. They definitely stepped up in this one. Sam definitely stepped up as well in a very, very impactful, important way. But the character development between the hobbits especially was really well done.
Another one that was very likable for me was the attention to the location details specifically. Such as Minas Tirith. Tolkien had went into great detail with how he wanted to describe the cities, the fields, where the battles were taking place, and where the Fellowship was traveling. Specifically, as soon as you get into the book, he talks about Minas Tirith, and it described in detail about even with the entrances coming from each level. They detailed to how he wanted to have his readers really imagine being there.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to put it.
Very vivid and descriptive and enough where you can like place yourself there. That's one of my likes about him is that he's like one of the kings of world building. You could really tell that he loves this place. Like he just truly loves this world so much. Detail and like crazy detail. Some would say too far. Sometimes I love detail, so I love learning about the world and stuff. So it was really cool seeing it from like his perspective, and it like really drawn out.
The not only just the creation of the world, but the creation of the Elvish language.
True.
He created not just a book for you to read, but a book for you to journey into.
Yeah, you get lost in it. Absolutely. That's why D&D is made from Lord of the Rings. Obviously, people want to live there. I don't know. Don't fact check me on that. When I read the first book, like I knew what D&D was, but I never played it. And then the second book and this book, I know D&D. And now I really see the D&D inspiration between both the book and like D&D itself.
You know, D&D, you definitely want to utilize as much lore as you can depending on what kind of story you're going with. With Lord of the Rings being so heavily doused with lore and history, its own right, can't help but think, oh, well, there's a lot of similarities. I wouldn't necessarily go as so far as, you know, say D&D was created from it, but
no, probably not.
Definitely not.
Yeah, but you could definitely see the inspiration. There's some things in there that was inspired by D&D, and then there was some things in there inspired by Lord of the Rings, you know? There's a lot of inspiration. Like, when I was reading about the Hobbit, they had called them a halfling, and when I first read the book, I didn't know what that meant. But now, playing D&D and being a dungeon master, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's such a halfling thing to do, and like all this kind of stuff. Not that you won't appreciate the book, but I think when you have a more in-depth vision on it, with having like D&D background, the book inspires you a little bit more, and you get to take it for more than what it's worth, which I really like.
I would agree with that.
I have a couple more likes as well, kind of just scattered throughout. Little things. I like that we started with Pippin and Merry's kind of point of view. And I loved how they were just like, we have to go do this right now. And they're like, well, what about breakfast? I'm hungry. And I'm like, okay, I love it. I thought it was really funny and added that tension reliever between like everything that was going crazy. And then they would just be like, well, we need to have second breakfast. I haven't ate yet. And I'm like, okay, King, go off. I did really like Pippin and Merry, and it definitely helped with their character development. There are scenes where you don't really see the internal monologues and like feelings from Merry and Pippin, but you get to see how they express themselves, how they interact with the world, which I really like.
I would definitely say that duo probably made the humor side of the Lord of the Rings for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The book may not have been as good, in my opinion, if it didn't have the hobbits in there, especially with Pippin and Merry being the way that they are. And then you also have the dwarf Gimli as well. He's a humorous person in there.
Yeah, he's not in it as much as in the first two books, which is unfortunate because I really like Gimli and I really like Legolas too. And I wouldn't say they're my favorite characters, but I do like them. I really love the ring's power. I think it was very smart and it's very sneaky, attaches itself to its host and pulls out all those negative traits like greed and stuff. I love the idea of like lost identity connecting with him going invisible. Like I think that's a really good connection. It's not just like a mind control thing. It's like them actually losing themselves to the ring. And we learn like later how Sam is affected by it, but he's nowhere near as affected as like the other people that have taken the ring upon themselves.
Well, that's because with the will of Sauron being in the ring itself, Sauron was a very persuasive elf, actually, if I remember correctly. When he got seeped into Morgoth, the earth entity, he got more into wanting greed and wanting more of the world and wanting to, quote-unquote, unite the world under one banner, so to speak, and he thought he would be able to do that by force. Having Sauron's will inside of the ring and him being as persuasive as he is and being able to really, like, get someone to just do his bidding, I think that was one of the biggest things that really made the ring what it was.
Oh, absolutely. Like, greed is such a powerful thing. Destroys kingdoms and it destroys people. You can read that in any book, especially fantasy. Any monarchy, really. You can see the importance of greed and how it pushes, whether it be greed for power or riches or whatever it is. It pushes kingdoms.
Yeah.
I think it was a good antagonist because we have Sauron. That's the eye, right? Because I always get him and the one wizard mixed up. Saruman, yeah. I always get those two mixed up. Big Eye Boy. We never really see the quote-unquote antagonist of the story. We have the feeling of him, we have the mention of him, but we never specifically see him. But having that ring be our pretty much the antagonist of the whole story, I think was really cool, and I really like that we get that symbolic of having like Frodo, who is Frodo, and turning into something that isn't Frodo anymore. Which leads into my last that I really like is, I like that Frodo really didn't get anything for doing this quest. Like, he gets the bragging rights, I guess you could say. He pretty much, as he's falling into this greed, he really loses himself, and if Sam wasn't there, he wouldn't have done it. Like, he literally gets carried up the mountain by Sam on his back. He could barely understand what was going on at the time. At the end that he came back, he was just depressed.
It was PTSD in a sense, too.
Yeah.
When you go on a journey like that, as with any challenges in your life, you don't really come back the same person. You're not as carefree as you are. You're not as serious as you are. It just kind of changes you when you have those life-changing adventures.
I'm really glad that he didn't just throw the ring into the mountain thing. Volcano?
Into the chasm?
Yeah, it's just erased everything. I'm glad that he stuck to it and Frodo ended up not being okay in the end, which is harsh to say, but it's very realistic. And I know that Tolkien went to war himself and, was writing this around the time of World War II.
World War II, I believe,
yeah. So I know that PTSD is a very hard thing to go through, and I think it was really well done in here. You could see the imagery there.
Right. You don't know what a war does to a person, but I think one of the lessons that Tolkien really wanted to do with this book and with the trilogy was to kind of show you that there's always going to be a light at the end of the tunnel with warring. So
yeah,
I think that was just one of the messages he have come across along with many others.
Comes back to the Shire, and he's a different person, so he can't stay in the Shire because it's not the same place as it was when he left, and he needed somewhere else to go. And I like that he left at the end and went across the sea and did his own thing.
Grey Havens.
Yeah. So what are some things that you dislike about this book?
I wish that there was a little bit more the poetry, the laments and stuff like that in this book versus, the first two. If you recall, the first two books did have laments and ballads and poetry in it. And I just think he sort of kind of slipped up a little bit.
Yeah, I know a lot of people complain about the songs and the poetry and the ballads in the books. I think it's really, really important. It's such a huge lore thing in their history because that's how they pass along their history. That's how they pass along legacies, is through songs. I think that with this one, I don't know, maybe he just pulled back because he didn't want it to be like super long, and that he gave what he wanted, so maybe the songs were still being written type deal. Ending the book with a little song would be kind of cute, of like what happened, showing that they lived through their legacy.
Right. Kind of like a lament for Frodo leaving and going into the Great Havens. But
yeah. So some of my dislikes, I was surprised that no one really died. I mean, like Gollum died, but who cares?
He wasn't really important.
Yeah.
I'll take that back. He was kind of important.
He was important, but I was surprised that none of like the main squad died. I wouldn't fully intended like somebody to die.
Boromir died, but that
was the first book, and that just was the whole thing. I was thinking like a Hobbit. Like I was like, oh, Merry's gonna die, Pippin's gonna die. If Sam died, I would just close the book and not continue. In the second book, when they were doing like that Romeo and Juliet thing, I was like, oh, Sam's about to die. He didn't though, thank God. Very surprised that no one died. Kind of wish they did, just because, I don't know, I think it would have added a little bit more to the story.
The only one that was closest to death, aside from, maybe Frodo, was probably Barry on the Fields of Pelennor.
True. One of the difficult things of not being like a huge Lord of the Rings fan myself is the names of everything. It was very confusing. I don't remember them being a map in this one, but I might have just sailed through the pages. Yeah, it was very confusing. It adds to, of course, that lore, but when he started going on and on about like people especially, and none of them were important in the sense of the story, I was like, I'm not going to make a flowchart so I can remember all these names. So I'm just going to remember the ones that are important.
Like the 300 men from such and such place or whatever.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, guy, let's calm down a little bit. No, I liked the book. Don't get me wrong. But I didn't love the book. For it being the third and final act in the series, it was very slow and very boring. Like, during the battle scenes, I don't know, maybe I read too many battle scenes in other books, but they were a bit boring to me. I will say when they were throwing, the heads across the thing, I was like, oh shoot, okay. Maybe I was just so excited about Frodo and Sam that I was just like, okay, let's get through this part, because I just want to see Sam again. So maybe if I like reread it, I would look at it from a different angle, because I know Sam's okay, and that's all I really cared about. When the book started, and it was like, 10 chapters before we saw, because it was in book 6 that we saw Sam and Frodo, I was like, where is Sam? Okay, I need to know if he's okay. That was a bit rude to have that suspenseful part in there. These last two dislikes are pretty common. I said in every single one of these podcasts is that Tolkien is very lacking in female characters. And I noticed that none of the female characters talks to another female character. They only talk to men. I didn't love that Eowyn was our only one. Heroine, yeah. I'm glad that we had her, because thank God we had a woman, but it easily could have been like Legolas could have been a woman, or Gimli. Just put me another woman in the party.
You kind of have to think about the time it was written too. The timeline of it. How far back you're talking about medieval days, where not too many female soldiers or females were warriors, soldiers, guards. Women in those days were more traditional. So when you think of that aspect and you put it into the book itself, and I can understand why it would be a dislike. Mm-hmm. Those times get a little bit more of appreciation to it.
I guess, but I think we could have just had at least one other woman in there. A healer that's being mentioned. I don't care. Just, you have to name more than just like one single woman in your entire book. The thing with Eowyn, she just felt like a broken shell of a person. She was. Yeah, she just came because she pretty much wanted to feel something, and she didn't feel something until she fell in love. Thea? Oh, is that who she marries?
I think so.
Oh God, I get the names mixed up.
I think it's Boromir, Boromir's brother.
I really just wanted more, because I was so excited that she was going to be in this one. Yes, finally a woman, and she's going to battle. And, like, she was still cool, don't get me wrong, but I wanted a little bit more.
I mean, she definitely had her cool moment, especially when she met with the Witch King, where he was sitting there saying that, no man can slay me.
Yeah, and didn't she kill the Wraith at the end? Yeah, she was cool. I wanted just, like, a tiny bit more with her being the only female character. I was very surprised by the length of the book. So I was reading this book on my Kindle, and on the Kindle, it tells you the percentage of how much you have left in the book. And I was at 34% when they threw the ring, and Gollum fell into the Mount Doom with the ring, which we'll talk about it in literally a second. I was sitting there and I'm like, how am I at 34%? And this is the climax of the story. What is happening? I was like, what could possibly happen after this? Is there going to be another war? I think I was at like 57-ish when they were back in the Shire and Sam was talking about marrying Rosie, and I was like, ugh. And then
second female character.
Don't even get me started on Rosie. She's a beard, okay? Sam and Frodo for life.
Oh, you're one of those Sam and Frodo tropes. Got it.
Oh my god, we'll talk about them in a second, but that should have been Endgame. So they came back to the Shire, and then it ended, and I'm looking at the thing, and it was like 60%. I'm like, what? And I continue to flip, and there's a freaking entire half of the book, like encyclopedias and like explaining.
Yeah, and it shows the lines of a lot of the family trees of some of the characters so far.
Apparently, I needed that. So I was very surprised that with it being the finale of the series, that it was so short. Like it felt fast, really. Book felt fast because of the length. I didn't even realize that the ring was gone. Like, it happened in, like, a blink of an eye, and it was gone. Frodo walked away, and I was like, dude, throw the ring in there. What are you doing? And then he was like, oh, Gollum ate my finger. And I was like, oh, okay. Then it clicked to me, finally.
Gollum did say he needed a hand.
Well, he got the finger instead, so. I was very surprised that Gollum came back in. I think it would have been really cool to get a point of view, because we were in third person the entire book. I love third person. I think it's a great way to tell a story. I really wish we got a POV of Gollum. It would have helped kind of solidify, explain why he was on the mountain, because he just kind of like came out of nowhere and was kind of a plot device.
Fortunately, the books, they do kind of lack for Gollum, but the movies do kind of forgive that.
Okay, I haven't seen them, so...
Definitely check them out.
Well, I do know in that one scene, when he kicks this helmet, he does break his toe. Or his foot. I do know that, so...
Well, everyone knows that, but...
So, Boromir and Faramir. Boromir was in the first book, and he died because he had taken the ring. He put it on, or he just took it?
He was consumed by the will of the ring.
Mm-hmm. And Faramir is his brother. Denethor had gone on and on about how Boromir is just so great and how he would never betray anybody, and he was holding Boromir to such a high standards, and he's like, you'll never compare to your brother, and your brother would never be tempted by anything. And then finding out like our side of the story as a reader, knowing what happens to Boromir and like being there when it happened, I think it was a really cool comparison of Faramir, who is his own person, has a chance to have his own story and his own expectations set for him, but you can't help to compare him to Boromir.
Right. Faramir and Boromir were both captains, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people did look up to both of the brothers, though more people, including Denethor, looked up to Boromir, the oldest, a lot more, because he was, quote-unquote, a capable warrior. He was someone who you can really depend on. As we found out more a little bit later in the Fellowship of the Ring itself can really destroy even the strong-willed person. Even though the ring wasn't necessarily a direct cause of his death, I would definitely say it played a part of it.
Oh, for sure.
Because he tried to redeem himself with Merry and Pippin, trying to save them from the hordes of Uruk-hai that were hunting.
Yeah. Brother dies from a heroic battle, from probably what he's been told. So his brother, who probably will never reach up to Boromir, but having Boromir be idolized when he was tempted by the ring and did die, betraying them, even though half of it wasn't his fault, was betraying them before he died.
And it was even more harsh because if you think about the scene in the book with Denethor and son Faramir, he was so blunt about Faramir's statement about, now you wish it was me that went to the Fellowship than Boromir. And he just so bluntly said, yes, I wish that. And it was just unbelievable. Well,
now that I know Boromir's fate, I want that to be your fate instead. And if he was here, he would be able to fight in this war, and I wouldn't have to worry about it. So in this one, who would you say is your favorite character?
That's a tough one. So honorable mentions will be Theoden. He was probably my favorite just because of the fact that he kind of doted on Merry as if he was his own son in a sense.
Yeah.
Total opposite of Denethor, which is my second honorable mention. Denethor was just... He had some relatable issues. What it's like to lose someone that you absolutely love and all that stuff, and then just be completely shrouded in all that anguish.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I would say that despite his lack of qualities, he did have some decent qualities somewhere along the lines, especially when he was having his conversations with Gandalf. As far as my number one person, it has to be Bedargon, guard that was friends with Pippin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And he, at first, was very cautious with Pippin because he was like, well, you look just like my son as far as height-wise.
Yeah.
You know, even though Pippin's like 29, 30 years old.
Uh-huh.
As he got to learn a little bit more about Pippin, he became very fond of him, friendship-wise.
Yeah.
So he was probably one of the first friends that Pippin had made in Minas Tirith.
I did like him too. I like that he spoke to him, like, after he figured out he was a man. He really spoke to him kindly and, like, offered assistance and was like, let me show you around the city and all this.
I don't remember his son's name, but he also had his son help him out as well. And there was a funny moment in there with Bedargon's son trying to pick a fight with Pippin.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
Pippin just basically scared him to where... Well, you do not know me, therefore you do not know how dangerous I am. And then just laughs it off like, you're going to ensue a fight, at least introduce yourself first.
Yeah, and then he's like, I'm just kidding. I'm not scary. I'm just a little halfling.
I'm just a little
guy.
pipe weed smoking
Yeah.
halfling.
I'm just chilling. So my favorite character is going to come at a bit of surprise. It's a little out of left field. You are going to be shocked when you hear it. It's Sam. I love him. I love him so much. Like, I mean, do I need to explain? Everyone knows, right?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like for those who've never read the books, let alone watched the movies, you should kind of explain.
You know what? I will.
A little bit.
I won't even hesitate. He's so authentic. Like, he's just very much himself. He doesn't care about what other people think and say. He is... loyal is a giant word for him. He's extremely loyal. Frodo would not have gotten anywhere without him. He saved not only Frodo, but he quite literally saved the world. He saved Middle-earth. He is the unspoken hero of the story. Frodo, of course, ring bearer. He took on a very dangerous part of the story, but Sam, if he wasn't there, it would have
been lost.
Yeah. He got Frodo on his back and was like, let's go. And got him up there. He's honorable. Such a great character. And I just love the way that he spoke too. He was very different than the other ones. He spoke with such care and love for Frodo. You could just see from the first spark that he cares about Frodo. And like when they moved in together at the end, I just loved it. And then when he had put on the ring, starting to get compelled by it, but his love for Frodo was so strong that he took off the ring and wasn't as eaten away by greed as like the others were. It's just, I just love him. Such a great character.
Well, you forgot to also add very optimistic. I mean, even in their darkest times in traveling in Mordor, tried his very best to be as optimistic as he can with Frodo. Even with some of his witty jokes that he made throughout the book, you can tell that he was not only honorable, loyal, but very optimistic. And in his own right, as you said, he's the unspoken hero.
Yeah.
He's the one that really made the hero get through what he needed to get through.
There's many, many qualities that are good about him. I can't name a single bad quality. He's just so...
I mean, he was a little shy.
No bad qualities of Sam. He's great. It's okay to be shy, alright? That's not a negative quality. Sometimes it'll save your life, okay? He's just great. I can't stop talking about him. And the actor who plays him is also smart and amazing and adorable, and I love it. All right, I just want to take a second here to shout out the Patreon subscribers.
Thank you guys for your support. We have Nick W, Patrick C, Tim M, Ashley A, Jenna P, Bree P, Shelby K, Emily P, Anastasia H, Jack J, and Lulu. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much. I adore doing this, and I'm glad that a couple people are listening to it. It's pretty cool. If you guys want to be part of the Patreon shout out, head over to Patreon and subscribe today. So I have a couple of questions for you. My first one is, so the Black Riders, are they like ghosts? Are they like demons? Are they orc in disguise? What exactly are the Black Riders?
It's kind of hard to explain that one. They're ethereal in a sense, but they're also physical. You could say that they're ghosts, but not really. They're more like phantoms in a sense. You don't really see their physical bodies, but you do see them shrouded in cloaks or armor or whatever else it is. But you don't ever see their faces or, hear about what they actually look like.
They had said when he had pulled back his cloak and he was wearing a crown, it was on a headless body. Like, you don't see his face at all. It's just a crown. But he's like he's the
Ringwraith.
Which is like the same breed. I don't know.
Well, Ringwraiths...
He's their dad?
Well, no. So Black Riders was what you're initially introduced to. And then later on you found out that they are called Ringwraiths. The ones that came after them in the book, and then the final one, the Witch King of Agmar. They were called the Nine as well. That was another name for these riders in black. And they were the 9 men that had each received a ring from Sauron. If you remember reading into like the very beginning of the books, you notice that there was that quote that was in there, the 9 rings gifted to the 2 men. There was the 3 for the elven kings, and then there was also 7 for the dwarf lords. The one thing I'm a little disappointed with was not being able to know who the dwarf lords were for the rings. Based off the lore and all that, you can understand who the 3 elven ones with the rings of power are. But getting back onto the Black Riders, that's who they are. It's just phantoms, I guess you can say.
Okay.
They're the forgotten kings of old.
I really wish there was a little bit more detail on them. Because you only really see them sporadically out through the whole series. And I'm just like, how are they supposed to defeat these things if they're like... I was thinking they're like, ghosts or demons or something. And I'm like, how do they have to call like Sam and Dean from Supernatural to come and like exorcise them? How are they going to do this?
They just call the gang. They call Scooby-Doo and the gang.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I was really surprised with the Path of the Undead. I was so interested in that. I was like, yes, let's get into it. And it was like, boom, done. And I was like, wait, I want to know more though. Because that was really interesting of going through this path of all the undead. Aragorn's the one that went through that, right?
Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli.
Yeah. I was really expecting like a whole, like a chapter or two, because that's like a very important part.
It was a slightly important part because of how much of a role it played when reinforcements arrived to Minas Tirith, or at least the courser ships that came in along.
Yeah.
The Anduin. I will agree with you to some extent that, there should have been a little bit more there, especially because you have not only just the 3 trio from the Fellowship, but you also have, if I remember correctly, the Dunedain warriors that came along with them.
Especially with the length of this book, he definitely could have done it without worried about being too far into detail.
He did give a little history, and what little information he did give, he did spike your interest a little bit, like, oh, how did this come to be? Or it makes you raise questions like, okay, is this like another part of the Middle Earth realm? And he gives you a little bit of a backstory to it, and like some nice juicy information in there too.
I feel like it could have been utilized a little bit better, especially with introducing all of that. And then not really go anywhere with it. I was very surprised. So let's say you're going to Mordor, right? Going to Mount Doom. Who's going to be your ride or die? Who's beside you, carrying you up a mountain in this story? It could be anyone.
That's a good one. I would probably have to say probably Merry. Just because, yes, he's got a good sense of humor and he does have a little bit of stupidity. For me personally, that little bit of stupidity will kind of help me get along with a lot of things that's going on. And kind of keep my mind off of the negativity of the objective when I'm just having to sit there and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Just what are you doing? That's not how you steam potatoes.
Yeah, I think Merry would be good. Would he be the ring bearer, or would he just be like motivating you?
Just motivating me, and hopefully have plenty of pipe weed.
True. Obviously, you want to pick Sam, right? Because Sam has already done it, and he already knows what to do. This is just the second time.
You really want to put him through that a second time, though.
True. So I'm gonna go with Shadowfax, the horse.
Okay.
But I want to make him put on the ring because, I mean, he's a horse. Does he know what
What are you gonna put the ring on?
Exactly, his tail. So it will. If I put it on his tail, it's not him technically putting it on because it's not touching his skin.
But the will of the ring corrupts all.
Does it ever say that animals are affected by it?
I believe it says all, which doesn't necessarily...
Do we have historical fact that it affects animals? So until that has been discovered...
animals?
No. They are conscious animals. No. I would say Shadowfax would be my ride or die, and I would just tie it to his hair on the back of his tail, and it'll just fling around, and we're going to get up that mountain together. Except I'm going to put Shadowfax on my back, and then carry him up there.
What do you think about the Black Captain?
He didn't really stick to me. He didn't really, so the ending with the battle, it definitely fell through to me because it was just so fast. I really didn't get a ever-consuming presence from him, so he kind of just fell through for me.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe if there was more destruction besides, the city being destroyed, I connect more with people than the city, because the city can just be rebuilt, but the people can't. I think if he had attacked Merry or Pippin or any of the characters, I would probably hate him a little bit more, but I didn't really see a lot of destruction in that part, so I didn't necessarily be like, oh.
I don't know, for me it was more of not as much as the physical traits, but as you sit there and you hear discussions about how he calls in the distance and how that puts fear into others, and you think during that time you see this unfurled black-winged rider just chilling, just swooping down into the battlefield. I don't know, for me personally, that's a tough one, because how do you combat in that? Really and truly, if you're in the heat of battle and you see this, you're like, I don't know what to do with this.
I mean, you got Gandalf on your side. He's a freaking wizard. Well, he should have been able to do something about it.
Yes, but at the same time, you have to think, too, during the battle, he had, during that time, powers that probably would have surpassed Gandalf.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the situations that it had arose with the sky being covered and all that. And then when the sun started coming through into shining some light, so to speak, his power sort of kind of waned. But you have to think, just sitting there listening to a screech from that thing, I think that would terrify anybody, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think it would be more impactful as a vision thing. But when I'm, reading about it, I don't know, I didn't really get the sense of, a haunting. Maybe just because I knew that they were going to get through it in the end. I had a feeling that I wasn't worried. There was no point of the story where I was like, this character's about to die, or they're not going to get through it. I had a feeling they were going to get through the whole thing. So it lowered a lot of the expectations and a lot of the risk for this book, because I was, not worried for any of the characters. Because I'm like, they're going to do everything. They're going to succeed. The only person I was worried about was Sam, okay? But somebody already told me that he made it through, so I was, worried at all.
Right.
Yeah.
I think another thing I'm going to go ahead and jump into before we finish out is the numbers. What I mean by that is...
Yes, please explain.
When Minas Tirith and Denethor had lit the braziers to call for aid, from all these other places, he got couple of hundred here, 700 here, small platoons of troops coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of the blue, you have Rohan coming in with 6 grand of people, 6,000 spears.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to look on the impact of how that really shows relationships between each of the lands. Because when I first read this, and I was like, oh wow, they're going against a whole horde, tens of thousands of orcs, orcais, trolls, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you got X amount of Gondorians, you got 700 here, 300 here, coming from different places. So you're looking at tens of thousands of enemies coming in, and you're like, this isn't going too well.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see Rohan coming in with this mass force that, for me, it looked like it just trumped what was in the city.
Yeah.
And then you also have to think about the power of horsemen as well, with how they take charges and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just the numbers on that just really kind of grasped to me. But maybe that's just because looking into a lot more of the lore and a lot more into the history of Rohan and Gondor and how they were aligned way back when.
Yeah.
It just kind of stuck to me.
I think one thing I was thinking about was why wasn't more people involved? Which is I was gonna talk about in my missed opportunities. This is one thing, because you're fighting essentially good versus evil. Why was there not more or lands out there involved in this fight? Because it is quite literally everyone's future. If the evil wins, then it's going to sweep across the land, and you're just going to make it worse and worse for yourself because you're going to be limited in numbers. So it's like, you should take the jump and just help now. And like, I get it if you don't have the resources to help, but if you do, why weren't you helping? But we'll talk about that a little bit more in Missed Opportunities. Before we get there, though, who in this one would you say is your favorite relationship?
I'm going to revert back to Pippin and Baragon. It's like I said earlier, their relationship just absolutely was great for me. Because you have to think, you got a halfling that's out here so far away from home. He doesn't know the customs, and you just happen to come across this guy who's at first a little hesitant about you, but then becomes basically your best friend. Yeah, and he was like alone because Gandalf stormed away because he was having a little spat with the leader, and he's like, I gotta go. Was just fighting constantly. Right. Yeah, having a little lover's quarrel maybe. And then, so he was just alone in this huge city. Didn't know what was what. He didn't know where he was going to go get food at. He didn't know the customs, how they act, or how they would react to him. So I feel like if it wasn't for Baragon, Pippin's stay at Minas Tirith probably would have been a lot worse. Yeah. My favorite relationship is specifically Sam's feelings to Frodo. They were just so strong. Like, again, it's third person. We don't get a lot of internal monologues, but we do follow over Sam's shoulder majority of the time. Seeing him finding Frodo, and he's in that room, he has to, like, trick those orcs. You're seeing him constantly grabbing his hand and kissing him. He's just always comforting him. He never cared about himself. And the fact that he, like, drank the water first, so that way Frodo can make sure he doesn't get, like, poisoned or anything. You know that TikTok sound where there's, like, history said that they were best friends, roommates, but they were too afraid to call them lovers? That's... Okay, well, that's the song that should play for these two. I'm so glad that Frodo got a Sam, because not a lot of people get that in their lifetime, and I'm glad that he had Sam with him. Yeah, it's rare to come across someone that you can genuinely be weakened around, especially in this day and age. You think of Sam and Frodo's and their relationship with one another and how close of friends they were. You wouldn't see that in this day and age, as far as I'm aware. He was very touchy-feely with him. He was always holding his hands when he goes to sleep. He was there when he woke up. He was kissing him a lot. And I liked that Tolkien wasn't scared of quote-unquote toxic masculinity. Like, he wasn't afraid that it would make Sam less of a man, quote unquote, because he was being very emotional and very physical with Frodo. Supportive, yeah. Yeah, he was very supportive, and he was very comforting to Frodo. And maybe that was more on Frodo's sake because he needed that feel of something real. He needed someone who is going to sit there and basically say, hey, listen, I'm here for you. I'm through the end of the worlds. I'm here for you. It's hard to come across a relationship like that with friends, or let alone family. Yeah. And then when they get back to the Shire, and Sam's was like, I want to marry Rosie for some reason. And then Frodo is like, well, we could live together still. And I was like, it's so cute. It was so cute. I'm glad that their friendship never wavered. It was there from the second that they left the Shire. And when you get into the movies, I will let you know that Gollum did play a very vital role in testing that friendship. Gasp. Yeah, that's as far as. Does he kiss Frodo and then Sam is jealous? That's all I'm gonna say. Oh no. You have to watch it to find out what exactly happens. Oh God. So the end of the book, a lot of people, I've been looking at a lot of reviews and stuff for this book, and a lot of people complain about the end of being back in the Shire, and it's like too long, and it goes into them like policing the area and getting the rebels out and all this stuff, the marriage of Rosie and the daughter. I don't know, I personally thought it was kind of cool to see the after effects of it. There was some parts I was like, I don't know if this is really necessary, but
I think it was cool that it didn't just end with them returning and they're all heroes now. And it gave, again, that realism of Frodo with his PTSD and, like, learning to accept life of who he is now. And, like, he comes in twice, I believe, at the end.
Yeah.
So having Bilbo come in again is very important. And then, like, Frodo writing the story. Like, I think a lot of it ties in really well.
I think it really and truly does. I mean, yes, it might get some hate on it, but in my personal opinion, similar to yours, it was a perfect ending with The Lord of the Rings. It really and truly was. Even when the crowning ceremonial thing that happened in Minister for Gondor.
Yeah.
And with them returning just to kind of, if I remember correctly, they were supposedly casting out Saruman's last-ditch effort. To kind of like hurt Gandalf where he can really get hurt at. Because if you recall, Gandalf had a very fondness for the halflings. He wanted to get back at Gandalf for what he did, for breaking his staff and all that stuff. So he tried to take over Shire.
Hit it where it hurts, you know?
Yeah. And unfortunately, he failed a second time.
I think it was done fine. I don't think that there was anything negative about it. Because it lasted a few chapters, but I think it was sporadically placed in. The only thing was, like, going into detail about the policing, I don't think was, like, that important. Definitely mention it, but they went into, like, a very detailed part about it. But other than that, I don't know. I thought the ending was fine. I didn't love it to high heavens, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was fine. Do you want to play a game?
Yeah, sure. We got time for a game.
Okay. Alright, so the game we have today is, you're going to put the events of the book in order by what they happened, and whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Alright, well, I guess first things first, we'll go ahead and put Gandalf and Pippin goes for a ride east, aka going to Gondor to Minas Tirith. Pippin's new style, aka becoming a member of the Tower Guard, following the eastern ride. Riders have arrived, aka the Riders of Rohan is coming to assist. That comes next. Battle Cry of the Aegis, aka Theoden's Battle Cry. Naked and afraid, Sam finding Frodo. That was at the tower. Piggyback ride to Mount Doom, aka Sam carries Frodo up the mountain. A stroll around the Shire, aka returning home.
Yep.
And a happy ending.
Yay! 100%. So, what are some things that you personally would have done differently, would have changed if you were writing this book, just in your own words? For example, like we had already said, I really wished we would have saw more of the outside world beside the Shire and then, like, the places along the way. And having that outside force helping and explaining why they're not helping, or if they do help, why they're helping. It makes the world feel like, he does, again, very well-rounded world building, but the outside forces I'd like to know a little bit more about. But honestly, that's, like, the only thing that really stuck out to me is, why is nobody else helping? Why is it just stuck on these people?
Bouncing off that, I would agree with that, because there was definitely a missed opportunity to bring in dwarves, for example.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen more dwarves. I would have loved to have seen more elves, especially the elves of Mirkwood come into play. Or even, well, the elves of Rivendell were on their way to the Haven. So they were obviously not going to be a part of this.
They're busy.
Well, they're just trying to get the hell out.
I don't blame
Because
them.
they're like, we're just going to leave you guys on demise here. You know, and then you got Mirkwood elves. It's probably just over there just like, we're just going to sip on our fine wine and dance to the stars. Y'all can figure things out. Dwarves, I would have loved to have seen armies of dwarves. Just
It would be so cool.
So many Gimlis just popping in. I think he definitely missed out on going a little bit more with those, but in other books he discusses, some of the unfinished tales of Middle Earth, which happens to be a book that he made, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
So
I really wish we would have gotten a song at the end of this journey, epilogue, of just like, and the tales sing upon even 1,000 years later of this song, and then it just has literally the 3 books in a short little song. Would be kind of cool.
I would have loved after stories for all the characters, because they're just kind of like dispersed now, to have gotten something a little bit more about Legolas going back to maybe Moria with Gimli to reclaim Moria. That would have been a nice one to check out. Didn't
it end with Legolas and Gimli like, I want to know about your people? So they go and see his, and then Gimli goes and sees the elves so he can learn about that.
Right. Yeah. And it's strange because they became really good friends despite the dynamics between dwarves and elves, which in many tales you always hear about how they are always clashing with one another, and yet you have this dwarf and this elf just like, hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
I know, because I have a D&D campaign with elves and a dwarf, and they're always fighting each other. It's still true to this day. Okay.
But yeah, I think there's a couple of missed opportunities, maybe for what happens after the ring, what happens to the Fellowship afterwards. You know, Gandalf and the rest, they went to the Grey Havens to live on the rest of their lives. And then you see Sam with his wife and kids. I don't think you know anything about Merry and Pippin and what they do, if I recall correctly. I don't think they did anything with them in the book. I could be wrong.
Besides, like, the Prince of the Shire for Pippin.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I think he went back to Gondor to serve Aragorn, but I could be wrong. I'll have to look back up on the lore on all of that.
Yeah, you can look at any story and say there's always more that could have been done.
Oh, absolutely.
Because your mind just kind of starts racing on its own, and it's like, well, what about this? That the author probably didn't think of at the time. That you're like, well, what about this? What about this? So it's nice to, like, leave it up to your imagination, but also having that definitive answer is also nice. Here, anything else you want to talk about before we go?
Or if you don't check out the books, definitely check out the movies at the very least.
I will say, I don't know if I should say it because it's kind of harsh. When I was reading the books, I was like, I don't get the hype of Lord of the Rings. I guess it's just not my cup of tea, and that's fine. I really like fantasy, but you don't have to like all of fantasy if you like fantasy. Lord of the Rings just wasn't my cup of tea. Don't resonate with it, maybe because I read it later in life, so I don't resonate as much as like some people do. And I really think the movies have a play into it, because I have asked everybody I know that loves Lord of the Rings, and I've asked everyone, have you read the books? And every single one of them says no.
Really?
Yeah. So I feel like the movies have such a driving force of the community of Lord of the Rings.
Yes. That's why I definitely encourage at least watching the movies, because get a lot more from the movies in the sense of the impact of Rohan coming in, the impact of Aragorn coming in with the dead. You see the drive of Frodo and Sam trying to get up the Mount Doom. Now, that being said, certain things are said by certain people. You don't get the opportunity to see other characters being into play in the movies, which kind of sucks. But I think because of Peter Jackson, he did probably the best filming on those, if I'm being honest. I think that's what makes The Lord of the Rings so legendary in its own right with its fandom. Now, for me personally, I read the books back in school, and then I remembered, I think Mom had given me The Fellowship of the Ring on VHS for my birthday or Christmas way back when.
I'm glad that our mom decided to feed your addiction of getting those for you.
She started it.
Yeah. I'm really excited to watch the movies because I'm excited to go at it with a different perspective of reading the books and then going into the movies. Reread the series again and see it from a different view again.
Well, there's always something new. I mean, even to this very day.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, watching the movies, even at the age that I'm at right now, there's still a couple of things I kind of
sharp
poke out.
50.
Halfway point.
Oh, okay.
But just seeing certain things in there, I'm like, how did I miss that?
Yeah.
Even to this very day.
No matter how many times you read something, you always discover something new about it. And it's not necessarily that the book changes, but you change. And you see it from a different perspective because you understand it a little bit differently from your own experiences. So, unfortunately, it is time for us to go, but before we do one last thing. So, we are going to do a rating scale, but we do it a little bit different here on the book stop. We make up our own thing. So, I would give The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien 2 bros chilling in some orc armor, holding hands into the night out of 5. Okay. I think I liked talking about it more than I liked reading it. The book, it was just a little slow to me, but it's somehow still fast. It was a weird combination, and I love Sam. That's all you need to know. I just really wish there was more female characters, and I get that it was written at a time and it just didn't age right, but I really, 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 really wish there was more than just the amount that we got, and then none of them talking to each other.
For me personally, 8 ring raves out of 10.
Heck yeah.
The reason why for that is just mainly I love the book a lot. Even at my age now, I love the book so much.
A sharp 16.
Right. Well, hang on now. Caught me off guard on that one.
Right.
Sharp 60, I like that. But, no, I mean, even at my age, being almost
70.
halfway 70, I find different things that I love about the books. And yeah, there's some missed opportunities in there. Yes, there's some things I kind of wish I had done a little differently. But I appreciate the artwork. I appreciate the literacy of it. And I appreciate the lore overall and just the overall detail of the book.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the Book Stop and finishing out this trilogy.
You're welcome.
I don't believe you're on anytime this year, and I don't think we have anything scheduled for next year. But if you guys want to see Cody back on the Book Stop, interact with this episode, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.
Toodles.
Thank you for turning the pages with us today. If you've enjoyed this episode, show your support by leaving a review, sharing the episode, and following the podcast on Instagram at The Book Stop Podcast. Join us on Patreon for early access to episodes and other additional content. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Hope you are too.